Right now, one country can still decide whether another gets the chips to build advanced AI.
Trump says he won't allow Nvidia's cutting-edge AI chips to be sold to China.
That is not a market, it is a choke point. And that is why the Nvidia-Huawei war is not really about chip. It is about who gets permission to build AI at scale. Most people still think the AI race happens at the level of models. ChatGPT versus DeepSeek, Claude versus Gemini. But models are the surface. Underneath them is the real contest. Compute, cloud, software compatibility, data center infrastructure, and the political power to decide who gets access to all of it. That is where Nvidia and Huawei matter. Nvidia is not just selling GPUs. It is becoming the default operating environment of global AI. In fiscal 2025, Nvidia's data center revenue reached $115.2 billion. Its GB200 systems are being deployed by AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, Oracle Cloud, and CoreWeave. And more than 75% of the top 500 supercomputers use NVIDIA technologies. That is not just commercial success, that is infrastructure dominance. If you are a frontier lab, a hyperscaler, a startup, or a government, you are not just buying hardware. You are buying entry into the environment where AI gets trained, deployed, and scaled. That is NVIDIA's real moat, not just performance, dependency. Because once the same company sits inside the cloud layer, the data center layer, the accelerator layer, and the software layer, it stops looking like a supplier. It starts looking like a road everyone else has to use. And whoever controls the road does not just profit from traffic. They shape where traffic can go.
That is why this story changed in 2022. When the United States imposed export controls on advanced computing chips, supercomputing capability, and semiconductor manufacturing capacity, NVIDIA stopped being just a business partner to China. It became a choke point. Then in 2023, Washington tightened the rules again to block future workarounds. That was the real break. After that, this was no longer a normal technology market. It became a sovereignty problem. NVIDIA tried to adapt. It designed China-specific chips like the H20 to stay in the market. But even that became unstable. By April 2025, NVIDIA said H20 exports to China would require a license and took a $5.5 billion charge. That number tells you what changed. $5.5 billion is not the cost of weak demand. It is the cost of discovering that compute now lives inside geopolitics. In a normal market, supply follows demand. Here, supply follows alignment. Who you are, where you are, what state you belong to, what your compute might be used for, that is a different kind of economy. The customer becomes a strategic risk. The supplier becomes an instrument of state power. And once access to compute depends on political permission, every major country gets the same message. Build your own stack or rent your future from someone else's. That is where Huawei enters the story. Huawei matters because sanctions did not just block China from buying the best infrastructure. They created the incentive to build an alternative. Not a perfect alternative. Not yet. But a strategic one. Huawei's 2024 reporting says the Kunpeng and Ascend ecosystems reached more than 8,500 partners and 6.65 million developers. It released CANN 8.0. It launched CloudMatrix as AI-native infrastructure. And its Pangu models are already being used across more than 400 scenarios in more than 30 industries. That is not a chip vendor improvising on the edge of a trend. That is a domestic stack taking shape. Chips, software, cloud, tools, industrial deployment. Huawei is becoming the closest thing China has to an end-to-end domestic AI infrastructure champion. That does not mean it has caught NVIDIA. It has not. The manufacturing bottlenecks are real. Reuters reported that Ascend 910C yields were around 20% and 910B yields around 50%. ByteDance reportedly ordered more than 100,000 Ascend 910B chips and had received fewer than 30,000 by July. So the Chinese alternative is still weaker, tighter, and capacity-constrained. But that is not the threshold that matters. Huawei does not need to beat Nvidia globally. It only needs to become good enough to prevent China from remaining permanently dependent on American permission. That is a different standard. And once you see that, the whole conflict changes shape. This is not chip versus chip. It is stack versus stack. On one side is the US-aligned AI environment, Nvidia Silicon, global hyperscalers, software integration, supercomputing presence, and the political backing of the American state. On the other side is a China-centered alternative, Ascend, CANN, Huawei Cloud, CloudMatrix, Mindspore, and a national push to reduce external dependency. That is what bifurcation looks like before people are fully willing to name it. 2 infrastructures, 2 ecosystems, 2 futures. And the rest of the world does not get to stay neutral forever. Most countries will not build their own frontier chip stack. They will not have Nvidia. They will not have Huawei. They will not control TSMC or the lithography machines. So their future depends on which infrastructure they become dependent on. And choosing a stack is never just technical. It determines where your data goes, which cloud relationships your institutions are locked into, which software environment your engineers learn, which sanctions regimes can reach you, which models you can run, and which political assumptions become embedded in your digital infrastructure. This is what empire looks like in network form, not occupation, dependency. That is why governments are now openly talking about sovereign compute. They understand something the software world spent years ignoring. If intelligence becomes infrastructure, then dependence becomes vulnerability. And vulnerability does not show up only in war. It shows up in slower ways first, in delayed shipments, in licensing uncertainty, in domestic labs that cannot scale, in public institutions relying on foreign clouds for sensitive workloads, in startups discovering that their business model depends on hardware they do not control and access they cannot guarantee. That is how sovereignty erodes in the AI era, through quiet architectural dependence. This is also where export controls become more complicated than they first appear. Yes, sanctions can slow a rival down, but they also create urgency. Urgency creates funding. Funding creates institutions. And institutions, over time, create alternatives. That is the paradox. Every sanction meant to freeze dependency can also accelerate substitution. Not immediately, not cleanly, but structurally. In the short term, Nvidia is still stronger. Its ecosystem is deeper. Its cloud presence is broader. Its data center position is far more secure. But the deeper question is no longer who has the best chip cycle. It is whether the world is moving toward one AI infrastructure order or 2 competing ones. And the evidence increasingly points to 2. One where AI runs on the American stack by default, and one where states shut out of that stack spend the next decade building substitutes, however imperfect, because dependence has become too dangerous. That is why this story is bigger than Nvidia, bigger than Huawei, bigger than even the chip war itself. Because once AI becomes a layer of civilization, the countries that do not control compute do not simply fall behind. They lose bargaining power, they lose industrial autonomy, they lose the ability to decide how intelligence gets deployed inside their own borders. And at that point, what they are renting is not hardware. It is sovereignty. The AI age will not be defined only by who builds the smartest model. It will be defined by who controls the infrastructure those models depend on, who owns the stack, who writes the rules, who grants access, and who has to ask for it. That is the real Nvidia-Huawei war, and it is only beginning.